There was a fine spray of red dried in a rusty mist over the pocket of my fancy pajamas. Like someone with a nosebleed had sneezed on me. Bigger splotches of red, like some awful Rorschach test pattern, had settled in on the cuffs and the legs of my nighties. And there was dirt. I was covered in great streaks of earth, like someone took a muddy paintbrush to my white PJs. Where the heck had I sleepwalked to last night? A crime scene? I stood beneath the harsh bathroom lights staring in disbelief at myself in the mirror. Me, Joan Thompson, 22, brown hair, blue eyes. I always thought that was a weird combo. Girl next door is probably what some weird dude somewhere thought of me as. And here I was, looking like I had crawled out of my own shallow grave. My hair was a mess. A rat's nest of bedhead with errant leaves and sticks dangling here and there like ornaments. I looked like a cave woman. I am a sleepwalker and I have awoken covered in dirt and red and sticks and leaves. Okay. What the heck? I scraped off my pajamas, realizing I was the one bleeding. Thank God. There was a tear at my shoulder, both in fabric and skin, which had coagulated into a clumpy red mess. It sang a little when I dabbed it off, but the relief of knowing that I hadn't sleepwalked off and butchered a neighborhood cat or something was worth the pain. I must have just cut myself on a branch when I had wandered out. I climbed into the shower, scrubbed myself clean, watched filth swirl down the drain and considered how I had always locked the doors, communicating from my apartment to the outdoors, so this wouldn't happen. I had never gone outside before. Not that I had any roommates in my tiny one-bedroom dive to let me know if I did. For all I know, I could have been gallivanting around the state while my mind was imprisoned in dreams. I had first started sleepwalking when I was a kid. My parents had tried everything to keep me from roaming the house at night like an intruder. Drugs, more drugs, tying me down, like I was possessed by a demon. But none of it worked. I would tear free of my bindings like the Incredible Hulk and shuffle off into the kitchen or the bathroom or... Oh crap. I was late for work. I worked at one of those hipster coffee joints that sells overpriced Java to people in suits and millennials. And my boss, between his time spent checking out my butt and berating me, that was no one's idea of forgiving. So I toweled off, ignored the pile of dirty pajamas by the toilets as I got ready to sling coffee. A morning rush. One latte after the next after a black coffee, and then more lattes and maybe a croissant or muffin just to keep things fresh. Me and the other 3 employees were buzzing around into the place died down around 11. After the morning craze, we normally just milled about until some stay-at-home mom with a Karen hairdo came in, with the world's most complicated order that, I believe wholeheartedly, God couldn't even make correctly. The wall-mounted TV was running the news. It did every day. Whoop-de-whoop, I wasn't paying attention. I was too busy. Body found in the Russell Woods by a jogger early this morning. My head snapped around fast enough to give me whiplash. On the TV, a news anchor who looked like he was assembled in a mannequin factory stood at the edge of a tree line and above a chyron reading, "Murder in Russell Woods. Jogger finds mutilated remains." Red and blue lights flashed behind him. Cops wandered. Crime scene tape cordoned off a hiking trail. That was only 5 miles from my apartment. Freaky. Her voice in my ear made me jump. Sarah, my coworker turned good friend. I think once you graduate the teenage years, it's time to retire the term best friend. Stood beside me watching the TV. Mannequin news anchor droned and droned. I didn't hear any of it. My heart was beating like a fist against the walls of my ribcage. I could hear hot blood roaring through my ears loud enough to. I realized I had been asked a question. I looked at Sarah. What? I said, Joan, don't you live around there? If I hesitated or went sheet white or looked terrified, I don't think she noticed. Yeah, kind of nearby. She nodded thoughtfully. Well, be careful, okay? There's a killer on the loose. She said the last part with a sly smile. What did she mean by that? Did she suspect something? Did she have some crazy idea that I was involved? But she said nothing else as she shoved off to go mess up some Karen's order. Nighttime. I got ready for bed. I was scared, okay? Yeah, I admit it. I know it was silly, but imagine waking up covered in blood and dirt. Yeah, nobody's idea of a good time. I had been watching the news. They said the unidentified victim, likely a vagrant, was bashed over the head with a rock. I had never killed anyone before in my life, except for that goldfish that I forgot to feed when I was 6. And I certainly doubt that I had the gumption, sleeping or otherwise, to brain someone with a rock. Nonetheless, this morning had left a scar, and so I positioned my phone at the front door and hit record, hoping to see what became of myself after I had climbed into bed. It took me a while to fall asleep, my mind racing, and I was terrified of what my body might do once my mind had turned off. But finally, after a long while of thinking and staring at the ceiling, I set sail for dreamland. And then I woke up covered in dirt. I rushed into the living room and grabbed my phone. It was still filming as I'd plugged it in to make sure that it wouldn't die. I called up the recording of last night and I scrubbed through until I found. There, I saw myself, shuffling slowly like a zombie in a black and white movie, into my darkened living room. It was eerie seeing yourself like that, like I was a living marionette being walked along by some dark force. I saw myself slowly pad over to the front door, throw the bolt, and walk outside, thoughtfully closing the door behind. Fast forward 2 hours. A slant of dawn sunlight cutting through the blinds, and here I come, covered in dirt. A lot of it, like I had gone out rolling around in the mud. I watched the footage. I couldn't breathe. I was paralyzed, terrified by the thought of what I might have done. I quickly went to Google and pulled up the local news station's website, dreading what I would find. But there was nothing. No fresh bodies, no brutally butchered remains. Or maybe I had just hidden it better this time. No way, I didn't. This was insane. I had cut myself on a branch, yes. Yeah, that's where all the blood yesterday had come from. I couldn't kill anyone. I didn't kill anyone. It was just my hyperactive imagination racing like a roller coaster through insane ideas to make sense of what I had awoken to. I put the phone away and cried. I showered in boiling hot water, scraping my skin until it was raw and red and I looked like a cooked lobster standing in front of my bathroom mirror. I went to work. I went through the motions and my attention on the TV, glued to the news, just waiting for what I knew I would hear. But it never came. The anchor visited a lemonade stand and then the Pound, doing puff piece after puff piece, and there was nothing about a fresh body. They did a follow-up on yesterday's body. No suspects, no leads. I messed up orders. I got yelled at. I rushed over to Best Buy on my lunch break and bought a GoPro with a chest harness. I couldn't afford it. I was making pennies selling overpriced coffee, but I needed to see where I was going at night. And the night came and I geared up, strapping the camera to my chest like I was getting ready to go skydiving and wanted to relive it through the lens of my camera. Or my hijacked body was about to go murder someone, and I wanted video proof of the crime. I pushed that thought away and sunk into bed. I stared up at the ceiling for days, years. 5 minutes had passed. It took an eternity for sleep to come. And then I woke up. There was a little dirt, Some twigs had caught on my hair. My feet were raw, scratched by brambles and thickets, but there was no blood. I plugged the GoPro into my computer and loaded up the footage. I watched. The footage started in bed. There was groaning, me muttering to myself as I fought for sleep. The camera tossed and turned with me. I fast-forwarded. 3 a.m. I was still, I was asleep. And then I rose from bed like a vampire in those old movies. Wandered out into the living room. Then outside. It was dark. The moon was high and bright. I lived on the edge of the city in a fairly rural part of town with thick woods and quiet roads for company. I wandered the night like the living dead, shuffling up the side of the road like an escaped Alzheimer's patient. A car or two passed by, never slowing for me, clearly not concerned for the adult girl on the side of the road. I kept going up the road. Suddenly, I turned towards the woods, wandered across a patchy field toward the tree line. 10 minutes later, and I was in the trees, wading up a thin, overgrown hiking trail. Branches lashed the camera, leaves screened my view. It was dark. Deep pools of shadows drenched the forest. A little moonlight seeped through, illuminating my winding path forward. And then I abruptly stopped. I just stood there in the dark woods. I could hear the soft rise and fall of my breath. Suddenly, the camera jacked up, angling at my face. I had just picked it up. The look on my face is what scared me the most. It was my face and it wasn't. There was a cruel grin spread across my lips, and my eyes were bright and receptive. They were aware, alive. Those were the eyes of someone who was lucid, who was wide awake and running on conscious thought. I smiled down at the lens of the camera, and then I hit the off button. The footage went dead. I sat behind the computer, staring at the blank screen. I felt my heart lurching and swaying in my chest, like a tiny prisoner fighting to get out. I closed the computer and got dressed for work. I was making a latte when I saw another body on the news. Another 2 bodies. A homeless woman and her dog. Necks cleanly sawed open with a shard of broken glass while they slept in their small tent in the woods. I was almost positive the hiking trail I had seen myself on led to the very spot where they had died. I stared up at the TV, rooted in place, when Sarah startled me. "It's messed up, ain't it?" I looked up at her. I was filled with that awful feeling of anxiety. It felt like a cold stone of guilt was resting in my gut. I fished for my voice, but it wouldn't come. Sarah's face darkened with concern. "Dude, are you okay?" I blinked and I smiled. "Yeah, fine." I finished making the latte. She watched me, not buying that I was fine. I looked like crap. My makeup was sloppy and my hair was a mess, and 2 suitcases hung under my eyes. I continued on like I was hunky-dory. She found me smoking a cigarette on my break. I stood in the brick alley behind the coffee house and stared at a dead rat pitched over a trash bag. Maggots twisted out of its furry body. "What's going on with you?" Sarah asked me. I didn't realize she had joined me. She indicated these cigarettes and I offered her one from my pack. She was a moocher, but I didn't mind. The words came out of my mouth before I realized I had said them. "I need a favor. This is gonna sound strange, can you stay over at my place tonight? I know I sound insane, but I need someone to watch me sleep." She went beet red. "Is this a kink thing? 'Cause I'm down, but I would rather know beforehand." "What? No, Jesus, no way, I wasn't sure how to tell her." I sleepwalk and I think I've been going outside. Outside. I tried recording myself, but I need someone to be there to follow me. Not to wake me up, but to see where I go. It's God. I know it's crazy, but... Of course I'll do it, she said without hesitation. Should I come at 8? She came at 8. We watched a movie, we had cocktails. Maybe not the best idea, but oh well. And at 10:30, I left her in the living room and I went to bed. It was one of those nights where sleep refuses to come. You toss and turn and shift your pillows and drink water and get up to pee, and rinse and repeat until you would do anything just to fall asleep. After a while though, I felt myself dozing. That was, in its own long, meandering path down into darkness. And finally, after a dozen millennia, I passed out. When I woke up, the first thing I noticed was the color red. So violently red it hurt my eyes. It was everywhere. It was almost beautiful. The red room, it dripped on the walls in great streaks. It pooled on the floor in a dark black puddle. It drenched me head to toe like Carrie. It was splashed over every surface in my bedroom. So much. I couldn't scream. Even when I saw Sarah at my feet. She was ruined. That's the only way I can describe it. Red still ran from her in little trickles, and her skin, the parts that weren't destroyed, were pale, so pale. I was struck by how white she was, like paper, like the life had been sucked right out of her. Her face was gone. Most of her head too. I suspected a good deal of it was drenched over the cast iron pan I awoke to find myself holding. There were clumps of hair dangling from the pan, and little twists of which I knew were once her thoughts and feelings and dreams about her life. The pan fell from my hand and hit the floor with a wet squelch. It had landed in a syrupy pool of her life. I couldn't breathe. I still can't breathe, even as I write this. Her blood drying over me in a sticky blanket as I sit behind the computer and write this confession. If it even is a confession. Well, of course it is. I have to assume, extrapolate, that I killed the other people those nights in the woods. I don't know why this happened. Don't know what compelled my sleepy mind to do this. I wish I had answers. I wish I could remember. The last thing I can remember is closing my eyes, and then waking up to the color red.